Hello and a very warm welcome to The Wire. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta. The 2024 Lok Sabha elections have taken a decisive turn in the last week, with Prime Minister Modi and other top BJP leaders having accused the Congress of promising in its manifesto that it will redistribute the wealth in the country and give it to Muslims, specifically mentioning land, gold, women's mangalsutras, which he has referred to as Tridhan. The BJP has called the Congress's manifesto that of the Muslim League and also said that the attempt to redistribute wealth is a reflection of its Maoist ideology. Joining me today is a key member of the Congress's Manifesto Committee, Amitabh Dubey. Thank you so much for joining us on The Wire.
Pleasure to be here.
My first question to you is that the Congress's manifesto, of course, has been called a progressive document by many observers, with its many promises on caste census, apprenticeship program, and a reservation in private companies, and an attempt to uplift backward castes and communities. However, what is being focused upon is the fact that the claim of the distribution of wealth as well as the conduct of the socio-economic survey. Now, your party has, of course, claimed that the BJP is spreading disinformation and lies. But here I want to focus on two key points in your manifesto that is being used by the BJP. One is where it states that the Congress will conduct a nationwide socio-economic and caste census to enumerate the castes and subcastes and their socio-economic conditions. Based on the data, we will strengthen the agenda for affirmative action. In another section, the manifesto says that the Congress will establish an authority to monitor the distribution to the poor of government land and surplus land under the Land Ceiling Act. Now, later, I also want to, before I come to my question, I also want to draw focus to a statement made by Rahul Gandhi at a rally in Hyderabad on the 6th of April, where he said that we will conduct an X-ray of the country. Things will become clear. Backward class, Dalits, Adivasis, people of the weaker general class and minorities will come to know what their share in the country is. After this, we will do a financial and institutional survey. We will find out who all and what section of people hold what wealth, and after this historic step, we will take revolutionary measures. What is your right? We will ensure we get it for you. So what did Rahul Gandhi really mean? If there are no redistribution plans, what is this revolutionary measure that is being referred to?
So we're very clear about what we mean. I just want to say up front that the Prime Minister's false claims, in our view, are just the ravings of a panicky mind who is seeing the inevitable, which is an election defeat, and is trying to distract and throw distraction bombs everywhere. But we are very clear. The first thing the manifesto talks about is that inequality is a huge problem in the country. It's a global problem, but in India it's particularly acute. As the data shows, this is Thomas Piketty and his co-authors have shown this empirically. The top 1% has as much wealth as 40%, or has 40% of the wealth of the country. The level of inequality has soared to higher levels than the British Raj, which is really quite an indictment of the Modi government and its policies. And so we have a set of proposals to address this. Number one is that our proposals these are our flagship proposals, right? The Mahalakshmi scheme, 1 lakh per year for poor women. There's a 400 rupee NREGA wage. There is Pehli Naukri Pakki, which is an apprenticeship that you talked about. There is 30 lakh jobs that are being sanctioned by the central government but have not been filled. There is a legal MSP. And last but not least is the socioeconomic caste census. So this is a package of policies aimed at the bottom of the pyramid, as people say, to address the inequalities that have come up, that have gone up to record levels under the Modi government. The SECC specifically, so all of these proposals are for all segments of society. This is not aimed at minorities, SC, ST, OBC directly. Most of these policies are for all poor people. But there is also an element of caste discrimination that has to be addressed, and underrepresentation. And for that, we already have data on SC, ST, right, and under the census. What we are saying is we need to count the OBCs, which is, of course, the largest segment, the largest disadvantaged segment in the country. Now, Mr. Modi calls himself Sabse Bada OBC, but he refuses to count the OBCs. And I want to remind your viewers that in 2018, this very government, the Modi government, said we will count the OBCs. And when the census questions came up, there was no column for OBCs. Thousands of crores are spent in the Ministry of Social Justice and other heads on SC, ST, OBC. So how can we not have empirical data to count them, to know how to target these, how much to spend, who to send it to? There's a subcategorization issue as well within this. So all we're saying is that for rational policy making, you have to have an evidence-based conversation. One is on spending. The second aspect is representation. And as Rahul Gandhi has said many times, when you look at the institutions where actual decision making is done, higher bureaucracy, media, businesses, outside the political domain where there is representation for many years, you have a serious problem of underrepresentation. And so to generate a conversation about how to solve this problem, we want to get data again. So this would be the socioeconomic caste census. It will be, which also has data, by the way, on assets and income. So this is not something new that we are proposing. This is what every census has done since the beginning of the census, including the Modi government. Of course, they haven't done the 21 census. A lot of people talk about, how there's a lot of data now out there. There's big data. There's all sorts of additional sources of data beyond the census. So to get further evidence, we can use all sorts of techniques, including surveys, to get data on wealth holdings. Thomas Piketty and his team, his researchers have data. Other people have data. The banking system have data. So there is all sorts of perfectly legitimate ways to fill out the picture and then have a conversation about representation. So these are the two ways we're doing. There is no redistribution of poverty whatsoever. It is about where the resources go. And the government land is part of that. We are not taking land away from anyone. Government land has been for many years as part of land reform and as part of the distribution of land. This land has been given to the underprivileged and to segments that need it. So it is not about redistribution of anyone else's property. It is about how government money is spent, and it is about how these groups are represented.
All right, you're saying that it is not about redistribution and how government money is essentially spent. But let's go back a little bit to where this whole conversation really started with Prime Minister Modi's rally in Rajasthan's Banswara last week, where he referred to the statement by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. This was, of course, his speech in 2006 at the National Defence Council meeting about minorities, particularly Muslims, having the first claim to India's resources. Now, your manifesto does not specifically mention Muslims, but how do you respond to this charge by the Prime Minister himself and then a slew of other top BJP leaders, where they are also circulating a video clip of Mr. Manmohan Singh saying this particular line? So how do you respond to this?
Well, obviously, as I said earlier, they are trying to distract from the core issue. The core issue is the failure of the Modi government over 10 years to solve the problems of the youth, women, poor, workers, and SC, ST, OBC, all of these groups. Even the middle class, they came up with this myth about an inheritance tax. But let's look at the taxes that they have imposed on the middle class. Section 80C benefits have been diluted. Any money you invest outside for education and other you have to pay a tax is deducted at source, a very large tax is deducted at source. You have all sorts of charges, cesses that the middle class has to pay, while the large corporates have gotten all the tax benefits. So an individual middle class person is paying much higher income tax than a large corporate is paying in corporate tax. So there are these inequalities. So Mr. Modi's policies have been an attack on everyone. Our argument is that he's bringing in the religious aspect. He's trying to divide the poor on religious grounds because he knows that once the poor understand, and by the way, they are understanding this, that they're all being discriminated against, and OBCs are the single largest segment of the poor, that his policies are working against SC, ST, OBC, economically weaker sections, and minorities. Which brings me to the point that Dr. Manmohan Singh had made. It's very clear. Everyone can watch the speech or read the transcript. He was saying that the first claim on resources has to go to the disadvantaged SC, ST, OBC, minorities, etc. So this is clearly a distortion, and I think it's been quite clearly rebutted by now.
But the Prime Minister has also said in an attempt that in this attempt to distribute wealth, if the Congress party comes to power, they will redistribute people's property, and particularly gold and mangalsutra, which he has referred to as women's stridhan. And this is a very emotive issue that is, of course, meant to generate certain kind of emotions among the people with the elections underway. How is your party responding to that?
Well, our party has been very clear that the person who most disrespects the Mangalsutra, whether in his personal life or through his policies, by how he dealt with the COVID second wave, by the kinds of distress that people have had in rural areas, two farmers commit suicide every hour, two unemployed people commit suicide every hour. So, who is responsible for what is clear to everyone. This, like I said, this is a distraction technique, and we are going to stick to our core message, which is that the India government, when it comes to power, is going to bring about policies for women, for the youth, for the unemployed, for farmers who are in distress, for the poor, and for the disadvantaged groups.
Since you're talking about the fact that you will bring in policies for the disadvantaged groups, coming back to the point of affirmative action, here is where the BJP has accused the Congress of taking away the rights of the SC, ST, OBCs and giving them to the Muslims. Now, I just want to once again state that portion in your manifesto which says that the Congress will conduct a nationwide socioeconomic and caste census to enumerate the caste and subcaste and their socioeconomic conditions. Based on the data, we will strengthen the agenda for affirmative action. Since it has not been explicitly mentioned in your manifesto, though it does mention that it will remove the 50% cap on reservation, which is again being used by the BJP to refer to a separate quota for Muslims. This lack of clarity is being, some say, is being interpreted by the BJP to make this argument.
I mean, this is again a complete lie. The Prime Minister, like I said, is raving and ranting in the face of almost certain defeat in this election. What we are talking about is representation and a conversation about representation based on data. It is a travesty that the single largest group that is disadvantaged in India is the OBC group, and we don't have any data about it. We don't know what their representation should be because we don't know what their existing representation is. I want to remind your viewers that the 2011 socioeconomic caste census that has this data that has been suppressed by this government, the Modi government uses the socio and economic data of that census, which covers 25 crore households, for implementing its various policies, but it's running away from the caste data. And like I said, in 2018, they said they would count OBCs. They are not counting OBCs. So this is, again, just a means of distraction. What we mean is that, as I said, the representation of OBCs, SC, STs in the institutions that make decisions, the institutions that affect the future of millions of Indians, is suboptimal. And so we want to generate a conversation about it. We are not saying we will do this, that, and the other. One thing we have said is we will breach the 50% ceiling on reservations, which, by the way, the Modi government has already done under the EWS policy. But we're talking about for SC, ST, OBC. But we have not said how much, because that is a data-driven issue. We believe there should be representation. There are different models of representation in different countries. South Africa has one model. The United States has another model. Other countries may have yet another model. We want to have a conversation about this that is based on data, and that's all we are demanding.
No, but I want to ask you again, what is this affirmative action exactly? Because if there is clarity on this particular phrase, affirmative action, then perhaps some of the BJP's concerns also can relate to this.
See, in our manifesto on many issues, we have said this is our goal, and we want to have a conversation about it. Rahul Gandhi has been saying throughout the Bharat Jodo Yatra and the Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra, the Congress party believes in having conversations. Mr. Modi believes in monologues and unilateral decision making. This is a fundamentally different model of governance. As part of that, reservations, representation, they are sensitive issues. A lot of people have various views on them. So we're very clear about where we want to go, but we do not want to road roll our way through it. We want to bring everyone on board and have a conversation, which is why getting the data will allow us to have a conversation, whether it's affirmative action, whether it is some other which the US style affirmative action. There are many models. We want to have a conversation about it. So we're not saying we're going to do A, B, C, D. We're saying that we're going to move in that direction, and how exactly we move is something that the government, once it is sworn in, will decide in consultation with many people.
Right. Since you're talking about this discussion that your manifesto is proposing that if the Congress government, India government is voted to power, then you will discuss these things. But what you're also promising to discuss is reforms to personal laws. Again, here, while the manifesto does not explicitly mention Muslims in particular, the BJP, including Amit Shah at a rally recently, has said that the Congress will run the country on the basis of personal laws and asked the people that do you want the country to be run on the basis of Sharia law. and the BJP instead has promised to establish the UCC. So, how do you respond to this charge of reforming personal laws and equating it with the Sharia law?
I mean, this is once again Mr. Modi's desperate attempt to communalize an election that is being fought clearly on Mehengai, Berozgari, and economic issues. It is, as I said, a distraction. What we are very clear, as I mentioned in my previous, when you asked me previously, we believe in a conversation, we believe in consultation and not pushing things through. There are many communities within the minorities also. There's a healthy debate within various minority groups about personal laws. There is a diversity of opinion. So we are just talking about a consultative process that could lead to such an outcome. We are not talking about pushing A, B, or
Just to
C.
interrupt you there, one could say that the personal laws have been discussed at length by the law commission, with two separate law commissions. So, what is the need to discuss it further, and what is the goal exactly, if one could ask?
No, all we say in the manifesto is that with the consultation of all the stakeholders, we can take this forward. We are not saying we will do A, B, or C.
All right. The manifesto also speaks about not interfering with personal choices relating to food and dress, and the right to love and marry and to travel and reside in any part of India. This again has been used by Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath at a rally recently. He said that they are saying that they will allow minorities to eat what they want. Is there a difference between what the majority community eats and what the minority communities eat? Our majority community does not slaughter or eat slaughter cows or eat cow meat. Now they want Muslims to have the freedom to slaughter cows. So in this section of your manifesto that has been used by the BJP to refer to the fact that the Congress will enforce hijab, allow slaughtering of cows, and allow jihad. How do you respond to that?
These are again the ravings of people desperate to communalize an election that is slipping out of their hands. There has been a broad assault on personal liberty in this country. Young people know it, the middle class knows it, the poor know it. We have an entire section talking about how we will bring back a spirit of freedom in education, in our institutions, the misuse of our institutions. So there has been a broad assault on personal liberties by the Modi government and various groups associated with it. All we are saying is that we will ensure that every citizen has these rights. Whoever is entitled to these constitutional rights, these rights will be assured. It is not singling out any specific group, it is for all Indian citizens.
The manifesto has also been called as that of the Muslim League. The BJP has said that leaders like Nehru and Ambedkar have opposed reservations on the lines of religion, and they have pointed to the sections in your manifesto which we were discussing earlier, and that you also refer to the fact that 50% cap on reservations will be removed, and linguistic and religious minority section which talks about the fact that the Congress will ensure that the minorities receive their fair share of opportunities in education, healthcare, public work contracts, etc. Does this imply separate Muslim reservations?
Does this imply what?
Does this imply separate reservation for Muslims?
At no point do we say that we will go beyond the constitution and what the constitution says, right? So this is again, they just keep trying to communalize the issue. I mean, it's just distraction tactics repeatedly.
The BJP has also been using the OBC reservation to Muslims provided by the Karnataka government. Now we know that such reservation is also provided by other state governments, including in Tamil Nadu, Bihar, and Telangana, which is on the basis of recommendations of the respective backward caste commissions. So, do you see this attempt to talk about these reservations just as an attempt to polarize or to drive a larger narrative?
The question that the BJP and Mr. Modi have to answer is that why is it that Sabse Bada OBC refuses to count OBCs, who are the single largest group of disadvantaged citizens of India? What are they hiding from? Who are they serving? Whose interests are they serving? They keep talking about, the Hindu majority. Why they discriminate against the Hindu majority? OBCs are perhaps the largest single section of the Hindu religion, and yet they are discriminating against them. All of their policies, their economic policies, hurt Hindus and Muslims alike. So they're clearly not working in the interests of the Hindu majority. So this is, again, they are working for the 1% or even the 0.1%, while they are trying to do this politics of 80-20 to divide all of those Hindus, Muslims, and all other religions who are suffering from their policies. So the direct question to Mr. Modi is, why are you discriminating against Hindus and Muslims in India? why are policies hurting everyone and only benefiting the top 0.1% of people who fund your party?
Finally, coming to the fact that you're saying that there's been an attempt to religious polarization by the BJP, and the top 1% of the country is benefiting. But the fact is that the BJP in recent days, since the last week when the Prime Minister first started speaking about this, earlier the target was the conversation was around 400 seats. Now it has gone into a completely communal narrative, so to speak. And the Congress, of course, including alleging that it's an attempt to polarize voters. But we have seen that the BJP has been able to mobilize on such sentiments in the past. In January, the Ram Mandir has also been built, which has also been used in the campaign by the Bharatiya Janata Party. Now, with the Congress being accused of appeasement policy towards Muslims, how do you see this religious polarization affecting your party in this election?
There are clearly two things that are going on. One is that our feedback and the feedback of many parties, and I'm sure the feedback for the BJP, is that all of the gambits of the last few months have failed to convert into votes. So their vote share is dropping. Our view is they're going to go below 180 seats, and obviously the opposition is going to come up. So they are trying to distract voters from the issues that are having a lot of impact in the current election. As I said, Mehengai and Berozgari are the two biggest issues, and that's what voters care about. Perhaps the second thing that's happened is that the turnouts have dropped quite sharply. So what is probably happening, in our view, is that the base is not voting. So perhaps to whip up their base and convince them to think about religious issues rather than economic issues, they're engaging in this rhetoric. It's clearly not worked for the first two rounds. We don't expect it to work for the coming rounds. This government is on its way out, and these are the last the last desperate attempts of an establishment on its way out to cling to power.
All right, there are 5 more phases of elections still to go, with elections due to ending on June 1st and the results coming out on June 4th. So we will see how these issues really play out in the coming phases and in the results, of course. Thank you so much, Mr. Dubey, for joining us on The Wire.
Thank you for having me.
द वायर के और वीडियोस देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन पर क्लिक करें। स्वतंत्र पत्रकारिता की आर्थिक मदद करने के लिए डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए लिंक पर जाएं और अपनी राशि चुनें।